So we'll be solving the specimen paper for 2022 in today's class. So question number one, the question that students dread the most, okay, or it's a hit or a miss. I would be very honest with you. The question says the student creates a table to show reasonable estimates of some physical quantities. Which row is not a reasonable estimate? So the first one says electric current in a fan heater. So if you were to talk about current in a normal fan would draw around 2 amperes or around 1 ampere or 3 amperes at max. So 1 to 3 amperes, and 3 is a lot. But since it's a fan heater, it draws more power. So since it draws more power, the current is around 12 amperes. So this is a reasonable estimate. They're asking which one is not a reasonable estimate. Mass of an adult person, something that's pretty simple, 70 kg. That's a reasonable estimate for the mass, 70, 75 kg. Maximum speed of an Olympic sprint runner, that is 10 meters per second. You can take the time it takes for Usain Bolt to complete 100 meter, and that would give you a good estimate of the average speed, and hence you can find out the maximum speed, which will be around 10 meters, 9.5 to 10 meters per second. Water pressure at the bottom of a garden pond, and that says 10 to the power 6 pascals. So my question to you is, if you were to talk about the pond in a garden, what would be the depth of that pond? We'll use the formula for pressure. Pressure is equals to rho GH. The density of water is 1000. The value for G, let's round it off to 10. And the height, H. Is my screen lagging? I've got one person complaining that my screen is lagged. It's stuck. Not really. No. सही है. So if it's lagging, it's from your end. I'm clear. सही. तो height की अगर हम depth की बात करें ना, तो a garden pond would be 2 meters deep. A garden pond will be 3 meters deep, 5 meters deep at max, but that's about it. So let's say the garden pond is 2 meters deep. So this gives me the value as 20,000 pascals. That is the pressure at the bottom of a garden pond. But the estimate that they have given us is 10 to the power 6 Pascal, which means one followed by 6 zeros. And I know this is way greater than this value here. So this is not a reasonable estimate. Hence, D is incorrect. Question 2 says, which expression has the same SI base units as pressure? So how do you work it out? You simply substitute. The base units for pressure are kilogram per meter per second squared. Pressure is, in case you're wondering how we come up to this, pressure is force per unit area. The base units for force are kilogram meters per second squared. For area, it's meter squared. That gives us kilogram per meter per second squared. So I know for a fact कि जी force को अगर हम area से divide करेंगे ना तो हमारे पास pressure आएगा. लेकिन force को length multiplied by speed से divide करेंगे तो कभी भी pressure वाले units नहीं आएंगे. A cannot be the answer. Similarly, force को हम length multiplied by time से करते हैं तो भी हमारे पास आ ही नहीं सकता, because pressure is force multiplied by length into length or length into breadth. So B hence is incorrect too. Now it's C or D. So mass is kilogram, length is meters, multiplied by time is second, and this entire thing is squared. So what do you get? You get kilogram per meter per second squared, which is basically the same as pressure. If you were to do this thing for option D, kilogram multiplied by second squared divided by meters, and that gives you kilogram per meter second squared. Difference कहाँ आता है? ये per second squared है, ये second squared है. Pressure के unit में per second squared आता है, तो आंसर हमारा C है. Let's talk about question 3. Question 3 says, the speed V of a liquid leaving the tube depends on the change in pressure delta P and the density rho of the liquid. The speed is given by the equation V is equals to K times delta P upon rho raised to the power N, where K is a constant that has no units. What is the value of N? Now I know for this equation, the units on the left-hand side should be equal to the units on the right-hand side. So when I substitute the units, V is speed, which is meters per second. K has no units. I'll omit that. Change in pressure is kilogram per meter per second squared divided by density, which is kilogram per meter cube, the entire thing raised to the power n. This kilogram cancels out with this kilogram. This minus 3, when I shift it to the numerator, it becomes plus 3, and plus 3 minus 1 is equals to plus 2. So that gives me meter squared per second squared, the entire thing to the power n. So the question is, the left-hand side is meters per second. The right-hand side is meter squared per second squared, the entire thing to the power n. What should be the value of n so that I get the same units? तो मुझे पता है मुझे इस 2 को भी हाफ करना पड़ेगा 1 बनाने के लिए, इस -2 को भी हाफ करना पड़ेगा -1 बनाने के लिए. सही? तो उस तरीके से हमारे पास आंसर क्या आता है? हमारे पास आंसर आता है हाफ. If this is half, if the value of n is half, so this will be equal to, this entire thing will be equal to meters per second. I hope this is clear. Which row correctly describes the quantities momentum, power, and temperature? A simple, straightforward question. I know momentum is a vector quantity. I know power is a scalar quantity. I know temperature is a scalar quantity. The only row that satisfies all three of these is C, where momentum is vector, power is scalar, and so is temperature. Question 5 says, a girl throws a ball vertically upwards. It takes a time of 3.2 seconds to return to her hand. Assume air resistance is negligible. What is the initial speed with which the ball is thrown? So let's say this is the point from which the ball was thrown. So this is the ball. The ball is thrown upwards. It reaches a maximum height, comes back down to the girl's hand, which is the starting position. We will use the equation. We have three equations of motion. V is equals to u plus at. V squared is equals to u squared plus 2as, and s is equals to ut plus half at squared. क्योंकि हमें टाइम दिया हुआ है, हमें इनिशियल वेलोसिटी चाहिए. सही? तो हम क्या करेंगे? हम यूज करेंगे v is equals to u plus at. The other equation with time is s is equals to ut plus half at squared. The problem with that is कि हमें displacement नहीं पता. Now for this question, once again, there are two methods to solve it. The first method is कि आप फाइंड कर लो कि भाई मैक्सिमम हाइट पे पहुंचने में कितना टाइम लगा. मैक्सिमम हाइट पे पहुंचने में इसको टाइम लगा है 1.6 सेकंड्स. अगर 3.2 सेकंड्स टोटल टाइम है तो हाफ जर्नी का टाइम 1.6 सेकंड्स होगा. तो मैक्सिमम हाइट पे वेलोसिटी 0 है. इनिशियल वेलोसिटीज आर अननोन. एक्सेलरेशन इज -9.81 and the time is 1.6. You solve for u, and that gives you the value of u as 15.7 meters per second. Meters per second. C. Or the other approach to the same question is that you take the entire journey into consideration. You don't split it into two. You talk about the entire journey. And for this entire journey, I'll use v is equals to u plus at. मुझे पता है कि अगर यहाँ पर इसकी स्पीड 10 है तो यहाँ पर भी बॉटम पे भी स्पीड क्या होगी? 10 होगी. सही? टॉप पे स्पीड 10 है तो बॉटम पे स्पीड भी क्या होगी? 10 होगी. सही? वेलोसिटीज की बात करें तो अगर इधर +10 है तो बॉटम पे -10 होगी. और क्योंकि हम वेलोसिटी से डील कर रहे हैं एज अपोज टू स्पीड्स, तो हम वो प्लस माइनस को कंसिडर करेंगे. So I can say my final velocity will be minus u if my initial velocity is plus u. The acceleration is -9.81. And the time it takes for this entire journey is 3.2. 3.2. And that should give me the same answer. U is equal to 15.7. Now there's a question here, and the question says, why did you take -9.81 and not 9.81? There'll be one difference. As far as this is concerned, अगर आप यहाँ पर +9.81 लेते हो तो आपकी इनिशियल वेलोसिटी -15.7 आएगी. उसका रीजन क्या है कि देखो, इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ वेदर द बॉल इज मूविंग अप और मूविंग डाउन, आपकी एक्सेलरेशन हमेशा कहाँ होती है, डाउनवर्ड्स होती है। एंड डाउनवर्ड्स वी वर टेकिंग दैट इज नेगेटिव, अभी मैंने -9.81 लिया। लेकिन अगर मैं डाउनवर्ड्स को प्लस लेके इसको +9.81 कर लेता हूँ तो मेरी इनिशियल वेलोसिटी -15.7 आ जाएगी, क्योंकि वो अपवर्ड्स होगी। सही। एज लॉन्ग एज यू हैव दैट कॉन्सेप्ट यू कैन प्ले अराउंड विद द नेगेटिव साइन। सिमिलरली मैं इधर भी अगर यही चीज चेंज कर लूँ तो मेरा आंसर -15.7 आ जाएगा। लेकिन क्योंकि वो स्पीड पूछ रहे हैं तो माइनस साइन वैसे ही हम ओमिट कर देंगे फाइनल आंसर से। इज दैट क्लियर? Question 6 is a radio controlled toy car travels along a straight line for a time of 15 seconds. The variation with time t of the velocity v of the car is shown. What is the average velocity of the toy car for the journey shown by the graph? One common mistake that I've seen in this particular question is students say average की बात है ना, average क्या है, sum of number divided by number of numbers. That is what they do. They'll say एक काम करते हैं, इन दोनों को प्लस कर लेते हैं, 3 और -6 को, 3 + -6, and then let's just divide that by 2, and that gives you some value as -1.5. And student would say जी option में भी है, this has to be correct, but that is incorrect. To find out the average speed, to find out the average velocity, there is only one possible way, and that is total distance upon total time. Total distance kitna hai? I'll have to first find out this area. This is the initial distance traveled. This will be, because it's a velocity time graph, area under a velocity time graph gives you displacement. So this displacement comes out to be 30 meters. Let's talk about the other displacement. This comes out to be 5 multiplied by -6, which is -30. Total displacement is 30 plus -30. The total time is 15, and that gives you 0 upon 15, which is 0 meters per second. The answer is B, which basically confuses students as to how average velocity can be 0. But if you think about it, the object initially covered 30 meters, which means कि अगर इसने यहाँ से start किया तो ये 30 meter, let's say, right पे travel कर ले. The object then covered -30 meters. So it returned back to its starting position. तो अगर ये 0 की velocity से जाता तो भी 15 सेकंड में वो अपने starting position पे ही होता ना. That is what average velocity means. Hence the answer is B. Question 7 says, the acceleration of free fall on Pluto is 0.66 meters per second. The object weighs 6 Newton on Earth. What would the object weigh on Pluto? Now, a simple, straightforward question. One approach to this is कि पहले आप mass निकाल लो. आप कहोगे जी Earth के ऊपर हम mass find कर लेते हैं. Using the formula, mass is weight upon gravitational acceleration. The weight is 6. The value for G is 9.81. 6 upon 9.81. And that gives you 0.612 kg. And then you say once again W is equals to mg, but this time around let's do that for Pluto. The mass stays the same irrespective of the planet. The value for G is 0.66, and you multiply this by 0.66. And your answer is 0.404, which rounded off becomes A, 0.40 newtons. और you can directly say कि जी mass तो constant है ना, क्योंकि mass constant है हम ratios से भी तो कर सकते हैं. I know W is directly proportional to G. Since W is directly proportional to G, on Earth the weight is 6 when the G value is 9.81. What will be the weight on Pluto when the value for G is 0.66? You cross multiply and you solve for W, you get the same answer as 0.40 newtons. Okay. Is this clear? Yes. अच्छा जी. Piyush, I bet there's a problem at your end. The others can hear me. If you can't, you need to check your speakers. Question 8 says a stationary firework explodes into three pieces moving in the same plane. The masses and the velocities of the three pieces immediately after the explosion are shown. What are the speeds v1 and v2? Acha. For this question, I know this is a question on momentum, conservation of momentum, but it's 2D. Since it's two-dimensional, I'll have to resolve my momentum. To resolve my momentum, I'll have to resolve my velocities. The answer to 7 was A, Fatma. I'll have to resolve my velocities. So the horizontal velocity is v2 cos 60. This horizontal velocity is v1 cos 60. The vertical velocity is v2 sine 60. The other vertical velocity is v1 sine 60. What is the mass? I see that the mass is 50 grams. I'll let it be in grams. So to find out the horizontal momentum to the right, this is 50 grams, and this is also 50 grams. Now, if I were to look at this, if I were to make an equation using my momentum in the horizontal direction, I know the total momentum to the left should be equal to the total momentum to the right. Because the initial momentum is 0, final भी 0 होना चाहिए ना, तो right पे जितना momentum है उतना ही left में होना चाहिए. So initial momentum to the left is 50 into v1 cos 60. Cos 60. Final momentum to the right is 50 into v2 cos 60. And when I notice this, कि जी cos 60 भी cancel हो जाता है, 50 भी cancel हो जाता है. This just tells me that v1 is equal to v2, which basically means कि आपके पास ये दो terms नहीं है, ये एक ही term है. ये v1 v2 नहीं है, एक ही term है. Or if you would have looked at these options, you would have realized कि जी ये तो same ही रहेगा ना. v1 v2 तो same ही है. 4 4 9.2 9.2 14 14 16 16, which means I can get rid of these subscripts here. I can get rid of these subscripts. ये v1 नहीं चाहिए मुझे, v2 नहीं चाहिए. अच्छा. Now I'll use the same thing but in the vertical direction. In the vertical direction, the initial momentum is equals to the final momentum. When I talk about the initial momentum, the initial vertical momentum is 0. The reason behind that is the question specifies that the firework was stationary. It wasn't moving. The final momentum, you have 2 traveling upwards. So 2 times 50 into v sine 60. And you have 1 mass traveling downwards, which is plus 100. 100 is the mass multiplied by the velocity minus 8. Once again, you may ask कि जी ये -8 क्यों लिया? मैंने -8 इसलिए लिया क्योंकि अगर upwards को हम positive ले रहे हैं तो downwards को हम क्या लेंगे? Negative लेंगे. सही? तो या तो हम इनको negative ले लें या तो हम इसको negative ले लें. ठीक है? एक ही बात है. And that gives me 800 is equals to 100v sine 60. V sine 60 is equals to 8. Hence, V is equals to 9.2 B. अच्छा, I'll just repeat the first step. पहला step क्या था कि हमने या तो option से देख लेना था, ठीक है? You either look at the option and come to the conclusion that V1 and V2 are actually the same thing. It's just V. They have the same value in all these cases, सही? Or you use the horizontal and the horizontal components of momentum to come to the conclusion that V1 is equals to V2. Once you do that, the next step is you say the total initial momentum in the vertical direction, which is 0 because the firework was stationary, will be equal to the total final momentum. The final momentum will be due to these 250-gram masses moving upwards and this 100-gram mass moving downwards with a velocity of -8. And that will give you the value of V as 9.2. Question number 9. Question 9 says an object is dropped at time t is equals to 0 from a high building. You don't need to do the cos wala part. You don't need to do it. An object is dropped at time t is equals to 0 from a high building. Air resistance is significant. These three graphs are plotted against time: the height of the object, the speed of the object, and the magnitude of the resultant force of the object. So they've given you the three graphs: the height, the speed, and the magnitude of the resultant force. What are the quantities x, y, and z? एक चीज तो मैं बहुत आराम से eliminate कर सकता हूँ, and that is के for an object that is dropped from some certain height, the initial velocity will always be 0, the initial speed will always be 0. So z has to be speed. Z has to be speed, and by that logic, it has to be option B or C. ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि आप एक ऑब्जेक्ट को ड्रॉप करो. You're not throwing it, you're dropping it. आप एक ऑब्जेक्ट को ड्रॉप करो और उसकी इनिशियल वेलोसिटी ज्यादा हो, तो ये वेलोसिटी का ग्राफ या ये स्पीड का ग्राफ नहीं हो सकता. Z ही होना है स्पीड का ग्राफ. अच्छा जी. Then let's talk about force. ठीक है, रिजल्टेंट फोर्स. जब हमारी रिजल्टेंट फोर्स जीरो होगी, तो हमारी एक्सेलरेशन भी जीरो हो जाएगी, हमारी वेलोसिटी भी क्या हो जाएगी, कांस्टेंट हो जाएगी. ठीक है, जिसको हम टर्मिनल वेलोसिटी कहते हैं. फॉर एन ऑब्जेक्ट फॉलिंग इन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ एयर, इट्स नोन एज टर्मिनल वेलोसिटी. सही. तो व्हाट डू आई डू नाउ? I know this cannot be force. Why am I saying that? Because somewhere around this time, my speed becomes 0. At this particular time, my speed becomes 0. जब स्पीड 0 है तो रिजल्टेंट फोर्स भी 0 होनी चाहिए. लेकिन क्या यहाँ पर उस टाइम पर हमारी रिजल्टेंट फोर्स 0 है? नहीं. लेकिन उस टाइम पे हमारे इस वाले ग्राफ के हिसाब से अगर हम इसको रिजल्टेंट फोर्स लेते हैं तो बिल्कुल रिजल्टेंट फोर्स 0 हो गई. सो दिस x हैज टू बी resultant force. What is y? Y is simply the height of the object. तो height कम होते जा रही है with time. सही. एक पॉइंट के बाद हम देखते हैं कि ये लाइन स्ट्रेट हो रही है, इसका मतलब है इसका ग्रेडियंट भी कांस्टेंट हो रहा है, which means स्पीड हमारी कांस्टेंट हो रही है एक टाइम के बाद. तो परफेक्टली फिट कर रहा है. So that tells me that x is resultant force, and y is the height. So the answer is C. Good question. It always seems easy when a teacher is explaining. I know. And the only way to overcome this is you practice as many papers as you can. That's the only way to crack this. Question 10 says, an object hangs by means of two cords around two rods as shown. The object is held in equilibrium. Yes, I will do that, Anas. The object is held in equilibrium by the forces F1 and F2. The object weighs 10 Newton. The weight of the object is 10 Newtons. There is negligible friction between the rods and the cords. Which row of table gives an angle of theta is equals to 90 degrees? Now what they're saying is कि ये जो force F1 है, ठीक है, अगर यहाँ पर फोर्स F1 है तो इस पूरे स्ट्रिंग के अंदर जो है, इस पूरे कॉर्ड के अंदर भी फोर्स कितनी होगी? F1 होगी, सेम होगी टेंशन F1. और दूसरे स्ट्रिंग के अंदर जो टेंशन है वो भी कितनी होगी? F2 होगी. एंड दे वांट दिस एंगल टू बी 90 डिग्रीज. सही. नाउ हाउ वुड आई सॉल्व दिस? आई वुड ड्रॉ द वेक्टर ट्राइंगल. I would use the head to tail rule and draw the vector triangle. I would say, let's suppose this is F2. And then this is F1. Making sure कि ये 90 degrees पे है. F1. मेरा resultant कितना है? This is my resultant and my resultant is 10 Newton. My resultant is 10 Newtons. Once again, it does not make a difference कि आप F1 कहाँ पे बनाओ, आप F2 कहाँ पे बनाओ. You can draw F1 like this. You can draw F2 like this. And you can draw your 10 Newton like this. The order does not matter. सही. As long as they want it to be 90 degrees, we've drawn it as 90 degrees. और हमें पता है ये resultant हमारा कितना है, 10 Newton है. सही. Now, which two forces will give you 10 Newtons? For that, you need to use Pythagoras theorem. सही. तो आप करो 4 squared plus 6 squared under root. And that would give you, what value does it give you? 4 squared plus 6 squared under root. 4 squared plus 6 squared under root. And that gives you something around 7.2. 6 और 4 क्या दे रहा है? Once again 7.2. 6 और 8 क्या देता है? That gives you 10 newtons, and this also gives you 10 newtons. See? So it has to be C or D. If you have a right angle triangle, if one side is 3, the other side is 4, the resultant will be 5. If one side is 6, the other side is 8, the resultant will be 10. Some of you know this. If not, you can always work it out. तो मुझे पता चल गया कि अगर मुझे रिजल्टेंट 10 न्यूटन चाहिए और क्योंकि 90 डिग्री से मैं पाइथागोरस थ्योरम यूज करता हूं, तो आंसर मेरा सी या डी में से एक होना चाहिए. कंफ्यूजन ये है कि सी होना चाहिए या डी होना चाहिए. हाउ डू आई फिगर दैट आउट? फॉर दैट यू विल हैव टू टेक अ क्लोजर लुक एट द डायग्राम. इफ यू वर टू लुक एट दिस डायग्राम, आप नोट करते हो कि ये जो मेरा स्टार है, ये जो इसका सेंटर है ना, वो थोड़ा राइट की तरफ है. It is tilted towards the right. It's closer to the right hand side. It's closer to the right hand side, which means कि अगर मेरे पास दो ropes हैं, दो cords हैं, connected to a pulley, सही. अगर मैं right hand side को drag करूंगा, तो वो right की तरफ जाएगा. मैं left hand side को ज्यादा force लगाऊंगा, तो left की तरफ जाएगा. Because this is closer to the right hand side. Because it's closer to the right hand side, I know this force F2 should be greater than the force F1. अगर F1 ज्यादा होती तो ये स्टार जो है थोड़ा लेफ्ट की तरफ होता, थोड़ा यहां पर होता. क्लियर? तो which option has F2 greater than F1? Option C. 6, 8, that gives you 10, and F2 greater than F1. Question 11 says, which force is caused by a difference in the hydrostatic pressure? टेंशन के एरो ऐसे कैसे बनाए? मैं टेंशन के एरोज, बिफोर वी मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, देखो टेंशन, जैसे कि मैं पहले भी बता चुका हूं कि टेंशन के लिए आपका डायरेक्शन कोई नहीं होती, विथ रेफरेंस टू द अदर थिंग होती है. सही. तो अगर मैं यहाँ पर बात करूँ, तो इस पॉइंट पर कॉर्ड में टेंशन अपवर्ड्स है. क्यों अपवर्ड्स है? क्योंकि ये ब्लॉक जो है डाउनवर्ड्स पुल कर रहा है, तो ये कॉर्ड में अपवर्ड टेंशन होगी, तभी इक्विलिब्रियम में रहेगा, बैलेंस होगा. सिमिलरली मैं इस पॉइंट पे चेक करूं, तो ये स्टार इसको नीचे की तरफ लेके जा रहा है, तो इसको ऑपोजिट डायरेक्शन में इस तरफ टेंशन होगी. ठीक है, यहां पर भी टेंशन होगी फॉर दिस कॉर्ड. F1 and F2 are weights, so will they be equal to tension? The resultant of these two will be, yes, this F1 and F2 will be equals to tension. तो अगर मैं इसको F1 की जगह T1 कह दूं ना, तो भी एक ही बात है, T1. F1 is equals to T1 and F2 is equals to T2. बिल्कुल. Question 11 says, which force is caused by a difference in the hydrostatic pressure? Pressure difference की वजह से कौन सी होती है? Definitely not friction. Viscous force भी नहीं, weight भी नहीं. The answer is B, upthrust. सही. The force due to a difference in hydrostatic pressure, hydrostatic being static means not moving, hydro means water, पानी जो कि still water हो, उसके pressure difference की वजह से जो force होती है, उसका नाम क्या होता है? उसका नाम upthrust होता है. Ikra, remind me once at the end. A car of mass 1400 kilograms is traveling on a straight horizontal road at a constant speed of 25 meters per second. The useful output power from the car's engine is 30 kilowatts. तो हमें पता है कि जब ये गाड़ी हॉरिजॉन्टल ट्रैवल कर रही है एट अ कांस्टेंट स्पीड, तो इसकी यूजफुल आउटपुट पावर कितनी होगी? 30 kilowatts है. This is the useful output power of the car's engine. The car then travels up a slope at 2 degrees to the horizontal, maintaining the same constant speed. अब क्या हो रहा है? अब ये हो रहा है कि ये जो गाड़ी है ये उसी स्पीड से जा रही है, लेकिन अब हाइट भी गेन कर रही है. सही. अब हमें क्या फाइंड करना है? हमें अब नई यूजफुल आउटपुट पावर फाइंड करनी है. वन थिंग दैट आई नो फॉर श्योर इज 12 आंसर नहीं हो सकता. Why can 12 not be the answer? Because when the car was traveling at on a horizontal road, तो 30 किलोवाट यूजफुल पावर है. तो जब ये इंक्लाइन स्लोप पे ट्रैवल करेगी तो पावर ज्यादा होनी चाहिए ना आउटपुट की. 30 तो ज्यादा ही होगी. 31 हो, 42 हो, 65 हो, दैट इज डिफरेंट, लेकिन ज्यादा होगी. सो लेट्स फाइंड आउट. आई नो this is the weight. So the component of weight down the slope is always W sine theta, where theta is equals to 2 degrees. गाड़ी का इंजन जो फोर्स लगा रहा है वो फॉरवर्ड लगा रहा है, एंड लेट्स कॉल दैट F. Because the car is traveling at a constant speed, I know F will be equal to W sine theta. F will be equals to W, what is the weight? 1400 into 9.81 into sine 2. See, this is the force that the car needs to apply to counter this weight. पहले एयर रेजिस्टेंस अलग, बाकी सब चीजें अलग. ये तो सिर्फ जो अब ये स्लोप पे आया है ना, उस वेट को, उस इंक्लाइन को काउंटर करने के लिए इतनी एडिशनल फोर्स लगानी पड़ेगी उसको. तो अब हम क्या करते हैं? अब हम इसकी पावर निकाल लेते हैं कि ये एडिशनल फोर्स के लिए कितनी पावर चाहिए. पावर इज इक्वल टू एफ वी. द फोर्स इज 1400 into 9.81 into sine 2. The speed is 25, and that gives me 11982 watts, which is 12 kilowatts. Rounded off, it's 12 kilowatts. इसका मतलब ये है कि ये जो इंक्लाइन स्लोप पे आया, तो ये जो वेट का कंपोनेंट है, सिर्फ इसको काउंटर करने के लिए इसको जो एडिशनल पावर लगानी पड़ रही है वो 12 किलोवाट्स है. एडिशनल पावर. ओरिजिनली कितनी लगा रहा था? 30 किलोवाट. टोटल नई यूजफुल पावर कितनी हो गई? 30 तो थी प्लस 12, एंड दैट गिव्स यू द टोटल एज 42 kilowatts. So the answer is C. साइन 2 क्यों? साइन 2 इसलिए था शहजाद क्योंकि डाउन द स्लोप वाला कंपोनेंट चाहिए ना. we need to find out we need to find out the component of weight down the slope. The component of weight down the slope is always mg sin theta. ठीक है, उसकी डिटेल वर्किंग भी है, लेकिन याद करें तो विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दिस इट इज ऑलवेज w sin theta. Just a second. Understood. देखो सर, आप बता सकते हैं why is direction of horizontal component of weight backwards and not forwards? आप बता सकते हैं why is direction of horizontal component weight backwards and not forwards? ये तो बिल्कुल सिंपल सवाल है भाई. why is it backwards? why is it not forward? And the reason behind that is if you have a sphere, let's say आपके पास एक बॉल है, आप स्लोप पे रखते हो, वो बॉल ऊपर जाती है या नीचे जाती है? वो बॉल हमेशा ऊपर जाएगी, और सॉरी नीचे जाएगी. नीचे क्यों जाती है? उसका वेट का कंपोनेंट उसको नीचे लेके जा रहा है. सही. सिमिलरली इफ यू आर गोइंग अप द हिल, यू फील अ ड्रैग बैकवर्ड्स. आपका वेट आपको पीछे की तरफ खींच रहा होता है. जितनी ज्यादा स्लोप होगी उतना ज्यादा पीछे खींचेगा. Constant speed indicates that W sin theta is equal to driving force. Yes. Clear? ये 12 हो गया. Let's move on to 13. If there are any more issues, I'll discuss them towards the end. The diagram shows 4 forces applied to a circular object. Which row describes the resultant force and the resultant torque on the object? Now, when you talk about the resultant force first, upward force कितनी है 45. What is the downward force? The downward force is 45. Vertically तो no net force. Horizontally right की तरफ force कितनी है 60 newtons. Left की तरफ force कितनी है 0 newtons. So there is a resultant force. There is a 60 Newton force to the right. So the resultant force I know is non-zero, either A or B. Let's talk about the resultant torque now. ये 30 न्यूटन की जो है ना टॉर्क के लिए कंडीशन क्या है? टू फोर्सेस इक्वल इन मैग्नीट्यूड, opposite direction, parallel to each other, and they should have a distance between them. Now, the problem with this 30 and this 30 is these two forces satisfy all the condition apart from the fact that these are in the same direction. तो इनकी वजह से torque नहीं होगा. That is similar to me holding a steering wheel और मैं right से भी नीचे खींचूं और left से भी नीचे खींचूं with an equal force. My steering wheel will neither move to the right nor move to the left. सही? तो यहाँ पर भी यही वाला केस है. तो इसकी वजह से no torque. But this 45 and this 45, ये इसको इस डायरेक्शन में घुमाएगा, ये इसको इस डायरेक्शन में घुमाएगा. So both of them will basically cause it to rotate clockwise. So the resultant torque is also non-zero. Hence the answer is A. Question 14 says, a uniform horizontal footbridge is 12-meter long and weighs 4,000 Newton. It rests on two supports X and Y as shown. A man of weight 600 Newton and distance of 4 meters from support X. What is the upward force on the footbridge from support X? अब इनको चाहिए कि आप हमें बताओ कि भाई what is the upward force at X? Let's call this Fx. Now there are two forces. One will be Fx, the other will be Fy. What's the problem? The problem is that they're both unknowns. So I'll have to come up with something so that I don't use one of these. So what I do is I'll take this as the pivot. मैं क्या करूंगा? मैं support Y को pivot ले लूंगा. पिवट लेने से फायदा ये होता है कि जो भी फोर्स मेरी पिवट से पास करती है उसकी वजह से मोमेंट क्या होता है? जीरो हो जाता है, तो वो इग्नोर हो जाएगी. नाउ व्हाट डू आई नीड? आई नीड द वेट ऑफ द ब्रिज ऑफ द फुट ब्रिज and that is 4,000 newtons, and this 4,000 newtons is at a distance of 6 meters because this is uniform. The man weighs 600 newtons, and from the other end जो हमारा pivot वाला end है उससे इसका distance कितना है? 8 meters. This force makes it go in the clockwise direction, sorry, anti-clockwise direction. Anti-clockwise. This force makes it go in the anti-clockwise direction, and this force makes it go in the clockwise direction. Because it's in equilibrium, the clockwise moment is equal to the anti-clockwise moment. So the total moment clockwise is equal to total moment anti-clockwise. I'll answer your question. The clockwise moment is Fx multiplied by the total distance from the pivot is 12 meters. 12. The anti-clockwise moment is 4,000 into 6. 4,000 into 6 plus 600 into 8. 600 into 8. And that gives me the value of F as F into 12 is equals to 28800. F is equals to 2,400 newtons. So the question is, the pivot is Y. The pivot is Y. Achha. So there was this first question that says, what if we made support X the pivot? इफ यू मेक सपोर्ट एक्स द पिवट, आपके पास एफ एक्स की वैल्यू तो नहीं आएगी. what you can find instead is fy. ठीक है, दैट इज द आंसर टू द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन. क्योंकि उन्होंने एफ एक्स कहा है तो हमें दूसरे वाले को पिवट बनाना पड़ेगा. अगर हमें ये फोर्स ऑन वाई पता होती तो हम कहीं पर भी पिवट बना लेते, वुडंट हैव मेड अ डिफरेंस. लेकिन एफ एक्स फिर भी नहीं बना सकते थे. बी 60, where is the resultant force 60? Who said? Because one F30 is moving anti-clockwise and the other moving clockwise. That is a circular object. Oh, Mustafa, end में. You're one question behind. End में Adila. Is the period? Where did this 6 come from? Where did this 6 come from? This 6 is basically, this is 4,000 Newton, which is the weight of this footbridge. And because it is uniform, the weight acts from the center, geometric center. So Ali Hassan, if this entire thing is 12 meters, this distance will be 6 meters. So your answer comes out to be 2,400 Newtons. If an arrow is going out of the page, then its direction will be anti-clockwise or clockwise. I don't know that arrow method. I know कि भाई ये pivot है. For this pivot, this force will go around it. ये कैसे होगी? Anti-clockwise. This force will go around it. ये कैसे होगी? Clockwise. This is how it works every time. I don't know, maybe your method is correct. Question 15, once again, a pretty technical question. The question says a metal block has a mass of 750 grams. Magnesium makes up 60% of the mass and the remaining 40% is copper. So 60% is magnesium, 40% is copper, which means I want to do this initially. Okay, by 0.6 of 750, 60% is 0.6, 60 upon 100. 0.6 into 750 is magnesium. So magnesium is 450 grams and copper is 300 grams. ठीक है, एक 450 grams हो गया, एक 300 grams हो गया. Now, the density of magnesium is 1.7 grams per centimeter cube and the density of copper is 9 grams per centimeter cube. What is the density of the block? Once again, a common mistake in this question is कि students say कि जी हमें तो combined density find करनी है, हमें तो total density, कहीं कहीं वो examiner average density बोल देता है. तो students क्या करते हैं, वो कहते हैं 1.7 plus 9 divided by 2. You're saying कि भाई average ही find करना है ना, let's find out the average and this is how averages work. But and you will get the value as 5.35 जो कि 5.4 बनता है. And you do have that as an option because the examiner expects you to do that. Don't do it using this method. जिस तरीके से एवरेज स्पीड निकालने का एक ही फॉर्मूला है, टोटल डिस्टेंस अपॉन टोटल टाइम, एवरेज वेलोसिटी के लिए टोटल डिस्प्लेसमेंट अपॉन टोटल टाइम, उसी तरीके से एवरेज डेंसिटी या टोटल डेंसिटी का एक ही फॉर्मूला है, टोटल मास अपॉन टोटल वॉल्यूम. टोटल मास कितना है? टोटल मास इज बेसिकली 750 grams. 450 plus 300, 750. The problem is finding out total volume. वॉल्यूम के लिए हम क्या करते हैं, पहले मैग्नीशियम की बात करते हैं. Volume is density is mass upon volume. Volume is mass upon density. So for magnesium, volume comes out to be 450 upon 1.7. And that is equals to 264 centimeter cube. You do the same thing for copper. And for copper, the volume comes out to be 33.3. So 264 for magnesium and for copper, the volume is 33.3. Now you say the total volume is 264 plus 33.3. Now you have the total mass and the total volume, 750 upon 264 plus 33.3. And that gives you 2.52, which is 2.5 grams per centimeter cube. Sir, they haven't asked for average, right? नहीं, वो average अगर ये लिख भी ले लेना, ठीक है? They sometimes use the words that basically make you think that they're asking you for the average. तो तब भी आपने जब दो चीजें मिक्स हो रही हो, चाहे वो दो लिक्विड्स हो चाहे वो दो सॉलिड्स हो, आपको डेंसिटी निकालने का एक ही तरीका है, टोटल मास अपॉन टोटल वॉल्यूम. Question 16 says, a man climbs slowly at a steady speed to the top of a ladder. What is the main energy transfer? What is the main energy transfer taking place for the man as he climbs? So the man is climbing at a steady speed, मतलब उसकी kinetic energy तो नहीं बढ़ रही, सही. और बढ़ कौन सी रही है? ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी बढ़ रही है. वो एनर्जी आ कहां से रही है? दिस केमिकल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी स्टोर्ड इनसाइड द पर्सन. So chemical potential energy gets converted to gravitational potential energy. Simple. The other option that would have made sense is chemical to kinetic, लेकिन वो तब होता जब वो बंदा speed up हो रहा होता. ठीक है? A person running on a horizontal flat ground and he speeds up. Then you would say chemical potential to kinetic. Question 17 says a bead is released from rest at point P and slides along a wire as shown. The wire loops around and forms a vertical circle of diameter 4 centimeter at point Q. The bead has a speed of 1.4 meters per second. Air resistance and friction on the wire are negligible. What is the height h from which the bead is released? So this is a simple question on conservation of energy. कंजर्वेशन ऑफ एनर्जी की हम बात करें तो एक पॉइंट से एनर्जी कंजर्व होकर दूसरे में कन्वर्ट होती है. सॉरी. सो आपके पास इनिशियल पॉइंट पे स्पीड है जीरो. स्पीड जीरो है तो काइनेटिक एनर्जी है जीरो. The only thing that you have here is gravitational potential energy mgh. अगर हम इस पॉइंट की बात करें, इस पॉइंट पे आपके पास कौन कौन सी एनर्जी है? काइनेटिक एनर्जी प्लस ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी, ke plus gpe. So I can say, I can make this equation that m g h at the start, यहां पर जो ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी है, this gets converted into half m 1.4 स्क्वायर, यहां की जो काइनेटिक एनर्जी है, प्लस m इंटू जी इंटू 40/100 विच इज 0.4. ठीक है, क्योंकि सारी चीजें ऐसा यूनिट में है, ये मीटर्स पर सेकंड में है, तो ये सेंटीमीटर में है. यू विल हैव टू मेक दिस कन्वर्जन फ्रॉम सेंटीमीटर्स इनटू meters. Now, even though we don't have the mass, but mass gets cancelled out because it's an unknown on both sides of the equation. तो वो cancel out हो जाएगा. 9.81 h 9.81 h is equals to 1.4 squared upon 2 plus 9.81 into 0.4, and h is equals to, what is the answer? 0.5 meters. H is equals to 0.5 meters. So when you go through a question like this, and when you look at the options, you should be able to automatically eliminate a few options. I can say कि भाई A कभी मेरा आंसर नहीं हो सकता, B कभी मेरा आंसर नहीं हो सकता, because it goes against the conservation of energy. How does it go against the conservation of energy? Because you cannot start at a point that is lower than or equal to 40 centimeters. अगर आप 40 सेंटीमीटर की हाइट से स्टार्ट करते हो, इनिशियल वेलोसिटी जीरो है, तो यहां पर भी वेलोसिटी क्या होगी? जीरो. सो इट हैज टू बी ग्रेटर देन 40. सही. हाउ डिड आई गेट द राइट साइड ऑफ द इक्वेशन? राइट साइड के ऊपर आपके पास है काइनेटिक एनर्जी प्लस ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी. ठीक है, देयर इज सम हाइट, सो इट possesses gravitational potential energy, and it is moving with some speed, so it also has kinetic energy. So half into m into 1.4 squared plus mgh. Moving on to question 18. A mass is raised vertically in a time t. The increase in gravitational potential energy is EP and the increase in kinetic energy is EK. What is the average power input to the mass? What is the average power input to the mass? So the total increase in energy of the mass is EP plus EK. ठीक है, जो हमने एनर्जी दी उसकी वजह से ईपी एनर्जी पोटेंशियल के फॉर्म में बढ़ी, ई के एनर्जी काइनेटिक के फॉर्म पे बढ़ी. तो इनपुट कितना होगा? टोटल पोटेंशियल प्लस काइनेटिक. सही. सो यू विल ऐड द टू टर्म्स, ए एंड सी eliminated, and they're asking for power. Power is energy upon time. So you need to divide this entire thing by time. EP plus EK divided by T. So the answer is D. Question 19. Question 19 says water flows from a lake into a turbine. Can you explain again question number 18? Okay, let me go over question 18 again. Question 18 के अंदर हमें वो कह रहे हैं कि जी आपने एवरेज पावर बतानी है फॉर अ मास जिसकी ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी EP बढ़ी है और उसकी काइनेटिक एनर्जी कितनी बढ़ी है? EK बढ़ी है. सही. तो टोटल एनर्जी कितनी हुई? टोटल एनर्जी इज द सम ऑफ द टू, EP प्लस EK. सही. ये जो मास है उसको टोटल एनर्जी, पोटेंशियल एनर्जी मिली EP और काइनेटिक एनर्जी मिली EK. और क्योंकि पावर पूछ रहे हैं, पावर इज एनर्जी अपॉन टाइम, तो आपने इस टोटल को क्या करना है? टाइम से डिवाइड कर देना. क्वेश्चन नंबर 19. Question 19 says water flows from a lake into a turbine that is a vertical distance of 90 meters below the lake as shown. The mass flow rate of the water is 2400 kilograms per minute. The turbine has an efficiency of 75%. What is the output power of the turbine? What is the output power? So what they've done is they have given us the change in gravitational potential energy. Exactly नहीं दी हुई है लेकिन उसी फॉर्म में दी हुई है. तो I know कि जी input power multiplied by 75 upon 100 because it is 75% efficient will give you the output power. So input किस फॉर्म में है? Input is in the form of gravitational potential. So mgh. Up mgh is the formula for gravitational potential energy. क्योंकि हम पावर की बात कर रहे हैं, पावर is mgh upon t, and they have given you mass upon time. They have told you कि जी 1 मिनट के अंदर 2400 kg है. तो 1 सेकंड के लिए फाइंड करने के लिए you'll have to divide this by 60, 2400 upon 60. So you are given the mass per unit time. So 2400 upon 60 multiplied by 9.81 multiplied by the height, which is 90 meters, multiplied by 75% is equals to the output power. The output power of the turbine comes out to be, P out comes out to be 26 kilowatts. A. Any questions? Any confusion as far as this is concerned? Okay. Moving to question number 20. Now this is a confusing question. A wire of diameter D and length L hangs from a fixed point. The wire is extended by a hanging mass M on its end. So the diameter of the wire itself is D. The diameter of the wire itself is D. The length of the wire is L. It hangs from a fixed point. The wire is extended by a hanging mass, capital M, on its end. The Young modulus of the wire is E. The acceleration of free fall is G. Which equation is used to determine the extension X of the wire? Extension X of the wire. सही. यंग मॉड्यूलस का फॉर्मूला क्या है? यंग मॉड्यूलस का फॉर्मूला है एफ एल ओवर ए डेल्टा एल. They are asking you for the extension, the change in length, and the change in length is equal to f l over a e, where e is a Young modulus. What is the force? The force is mass times g, mg. What is the length? The length is L as given in the question. So the force is M, the value for G is G, the length is L. Area. Now, they haven't given you the area, but they have given you that the diameter is D. Now you can't divide it by 2, or you can't write radius instead of diameter because the options here are in terms of D, the diameter of the wire. So area is equals to pi r squared. I'll write diameter upon 2 as radius. So it's still radius, but in terms of D. And that gives me pi d squared upon 4. So area is pi d squared upon 4 multiplied by the Young modulus E. क्योंकि ये 4 डिनोमिनेटर के डिनोमिनेटर में है, क्योंकि ये 4 डिनोमिनेटर में डिवाइड हो रहा है, ये ऊपर जाके क्या होगा? मल्टीप्लाई हो जाएगा. And you get 4 mgl upon pi d squared E. 4 mgl upon pi d squared upon E. Now the problem is all these options look close to each other, लेकिन यहाँ पर d squared नहीं है, यहाँ पर 4 नहीं है. ठीक है? They're similar, but there's a slight difference. 4 mgl divided by pi d squared upon E. Question 21 says, a wave has a period t, wavelength lambda, and amplitude a. The answer was D. 4 mgl upon pi d squared into E. Similar to our answer. A wave has a period t, wavelength lambda, and amplitude a. The wave is shown on a graph of displacement against distance. Which graph is labeled correctly? Acha. So a straightforward question. You look at option A. Amplitude is always from the mean position. No. The amplitude is always from the mean position. The wavelength is from this point all the way up till this point. सही, तो ये हमारे पास wavelength हो गई. तो this is correct. If you were to look at the second one, यहाँ पर amplitude सही मार्क किया हुआ है, लेकिन मसला ये है क्योंकि ये distance है x axis पे, तो यहाँ पर time period आप नहीं लिख सकते. You can't say that this is time period. Similarly, C में time period भी गलत है और amplitude भी गलत है. Crest से trough नहीं होता, it's from the mean position, mean. D के अंदर they have marked the wavelength correctly, लेकिन amplitude गलत mark किया हुआ है. Is the correct answer. Question 22 says a vehicle emits sound of a constant frequency. A stationary observer hears the sound. The vehicle moves directly towards the observer at a constant speed. The observer hears the sound of frequency f0. The vehicle then accelerates, still moving towards the observer, travels at a higher steady speed for a time, and then decelerates until it stops. Now, what I would like to do here is I would like to draw the speed time graph or the velocity time graph of the vehicle. The question said that the vehicle initially moves at a constant speed. The vehicle then accelerates, then moves at a constant speed, and then it decelerates until it becomes 0. So directly towards the observer at a constant speed, then accelerates, it then travels at a higher steady speed, and then it decelerates until it stops. Initially जो observer frequency observe कर रहा था वो f naught थी. So at this particular speed, the frequency observed is f naught. सही. अब जैसे जैसे स्पीड बढ़ती रहेगी, ठीक है, गिवन दैट इट्स स्टिल अप्रोचिंग, ये जो व्हीकल है आपकी तरफ आ रही है, जैसे जैसे स्पीड बढ़ती रहेगी आपकी ऑब्जर्व फ्रीक्वेंसी को क्या होगा, आपकी ऑब्जर्व फ्रीक्वेंसी बढ़ती रहेगी. ठीक है, एज द व्हीकल इंक्रीजेस इट्स स्पीड the observed frequency increases. So initially what will happen is, initially it will rise, f naught, the observed frequency rises, and then what happens is higher value पे वो रह जाएगी. ठीक है, it will be greater than f naught. So let's say this is 20 hertz, it will increase until it reaches 30 hertz there. और यहाँ पर ये 30 30 30 30 कांस्टेंट रहेगी. इसके बाद क्या होगा, ये कम होगी कम होगी कम होगी व्हेन द व्हीकल स्टॉप्स. तो जो इसकी एक्चुअल फ्रीक्वेंसी है ना, एक्चुअल फ्रीक्वेंसी, this is where it hears the actual frequency, and that may be, let's say, 5 hertz or 10 hertz. So let's go through the options. The observed frequency will fall. No, the observed frequency rises. So it has to be C or D. Then remain steady, then fall to a lower frequency than F naught. Yes. Yes. It then remains steady and then returns to frequency F naught. No. F naught से तो कम स्पीड पे चला गया ना, ये स्टेशनरी हो गया, तो F naught से कम फ्रीक्वेंसी पे आ जाएगा, एक्चुअल फ्रीक्वेंसी पे आ जाएगा. Hence the answer is C. A car is traveling in a straight line at a speed of 30 meters per second, passes near a stationary observer while sounding its horn. The frequency of sound emitted by the horn is 400 hertz. The speed of the sound is 336 meters per second. What is the change in frequency of the sound heard by the observer as the car passes? So, right, this is your observer. And this here is our car. So our car passes towards the observer, and then it crosses the observer and moves away. See? At all these instances, the car is moving at 30 meters per second. 30 meters per second. And the car has its original frequency as 400 hertz. This is the source frequency. What do I need to do? I need to find out the observed frequency. The formula of which is F naught is equals to V upon V plus minus Vs Fs. एक दफा हम प्लस करेंगे, एक दफा हम माइनस करेंगे. एक दफा वो अप्रोच कर रहा है, एक दफा वो दूर जा रहा है. सही, तो आपका प्लस माइनस दोनों होगा. अच्छा जी, apologies. So you do it twice. You do it once with a plus sign. You do it once with a minus sign. तो आपके पास दोनों frequencies आ जाती है. आपकी V की वैल्यू क्या है? The value of V, the speed of sound, is 336 upon 336 plus minus the speed of the car is 30 meters per second, and that gives you one value. जब प्लस साइन होगी तो आपकी वैल्यू होगी 367.2, और जब माइनस साइन होगी तो वैल्यू होगी 439.2. So this is 367.2 and 439.2. They're asking you कि जी डिफरेंस कितना आ रहा है? What is the change in frequency? For the change in frequency, you subtract the two. 439.2 minus 367.2. 439.2 minus 367.2. And that gives you the change in frequency as 72 hertz. All good? This was a challenging question, I believe, slightly different on Doppler effect. Which list shows electromagnetic waves in order of increasing frequency? So they're saying जी frequency बढ़ानी है, wavelength क्या करनी है? Wavelength आपकी कम हो जाएगी. सही? सबसे ज्यादा होती है आपकी radio waves की. For this, you need to remember the electromagnetic spectrum in the correct order. Say, so the answer is radio waves having the largest wavelength, longest wavelength, and then you move on to infrared having shorter wavelength, and the shortest wavelength of them all is gamma rays. Gamma rays have the highest frequency. So this is maximum frequency, and this here is the minimum frequency, with these two coming in between in this particular order. 24. 25. The diagram shows a steel wire fixed at one end. The other end is attached to a weight hanging over a pulley. An oscillator is attached to the wire near the fixed end. A stationary wire with one loop is produced. The frequency of the oscillator is F. Which frequency of oscillator produces a stationary wave with two loops? So they're saying कि जी अभी फिलहाल हमारी frequency F है. What if we had two loops instead of one? What if we had two loops instead of one? Like this. When you have two loops, powers are enough, Anas. When you have two loops, तो आपकी जो wavelength है वो half हो गई. सही? पहले let's say ये length 10 meters है. Let's say this length is 2 meters. इस 2 meters के अंदर half wavelength आ रही थी. अब इस 2 meters के अंदर 1 wavelength आ रही है. तो wavelength आपकी half हो गई. सही? जब wavelength आपकी half हो गई है तो frequency आपकी double हो जाएगी. Why? Because f is equals to v upon lambda. The speed is constant. F is inversely proportional to lambda. So the answer hence is 2f. The answer to 24 is B. The answer to 25 is C. Can I repeat this? Yes. देखो. Let's take numbers and let's do it. Initially, अगर हम wavelength की बात करें तो ये half a wavelength है. कितने meters के अंदर? 2 meters के अंदर. Which means कि जी wavelength की value कितनी हो गई है? 4 meters हो गई. ठीक है? Node to node is half a wavelength. And then what happens next is कि आपके पास ऐसे दो loops है. दो लूप्स है तो मतलब 1 वेवलेंथ आ रही है आपके पास 2 मीटर्स के अंदर. तो व्हाट डू यू नोटिस 4 मीटर से वेवलेंथ कम होकर 2 मीटर्स हो गई है. अगर वेवलेंथ हाफ होगी तो फ्रीक्वेंसी क्या हो जाएगी? डबल हो जाएगी क्योंकि इनवर्सली प्रोपोर्शनल है. क्लियर मुनीब सुबैर? Which statement gives a condition that enables diffraction to occur? Diffraction के लिए क्या condition होनी चाहिए? A source of wave moves towards the stationary observer. No, they're talking about Doppler effect here. A wave is partially blocked by an obstacle. Yes. When a wave is partially blocked by an obstacle, that causes the spreading of that wave, and that is known as diffraction. Two coherent waves are superposed. They're talking about superposition, interference, not diffraction. Two waves are traveling through the same part of medium in opposite direction. That is not the condition for diffraction. So B is the correct answer. Moving on to 27. Question 27 says a parallel beam of light of wavelength 600 nanometers is incident normally on a diffraction grating. The grating has 300 lines per millimeters. So the grating has 300 lines per millimeters, 300 lines per millimeters. If it has 300 lines per millimeters, how many lines will it have in 1 meters? Do we divide by 1000 or do we multiply it by 1000? Something that causes confusion. मल्टीप्लाई करेंगे या डिवाइड करेंगे? मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 1000, यस। ठीक है। एंड स्टूडेंट से सर मिलीमीटर से मीटर जा रहे तो डिवाइड करते हैं ना, लेकिन वो डिनोमिनेटर में, तो डिवाइड आप डिनोमिनेटर में कर रहे हो, न्यूमरेटर में मल्टीप्लाई होता है। और द अदर अप्रोच टू दिस इज कि जी अगर 1 मिलीमीटर के अंदर 300 लाइन है तो उसी का 1 मीटर का पीस होगा तो ज्यादा लाइन आएंगी उसके अंदर, कितनी 1000 गुना ज्यादा लाइन आएंगी। सो 300,000 बेसिकली लाइन्स पर मीटर। What is the total number of intensity maxima from the grating? Total number of intensity maxima. D, this is the value for n. D sine theta is equals to n lambda 1 upon 300 into 10 to the power 3 sine 90. Maximum जब भी find करनी हो तो आप 90 use करते हो, is equals to n. The wavelength is 600 nanometer 10 to the power minus 9. And that gives you the value of n is 5.6. 5.6 का मतलब है कि सिक्स्थ ऑर्डर नहीं बन रहा, आप कभी भी उसको राउंड अप नहीं करते। यू डोंट से 5.6 इज दैट इज क्लोजर टू 6 तो हम उसको 6 कर देंगे। यू ऑलवेज से कि जी मैक्सिमम ऑर्डर नंबर कितने बन रहे हैं, 5। अगर मैक्सिमम ऑर्डर नंबर 5 बन रहे हैं तो टोटल मैक्सिमम कितने होंगे, 11 होंगे। क्यों 11 होंगे, 5 ऊपर की तरफ बनेंगे, 5 हमारे नीचे की तरफ बनेंगे और एक जीरो ऑर्डर जो सेंटर में बन रहा होता है। सो इफ दिस इज माई स्क्रीन, this will be my zero order, and then I have 1 2 3 4 5 above, 1 2 3 4 5 below. So 5 plus 5 plus 1, 2n plus 1. So the total number of maximas are 11. Question 28 says a pattern of fringes is produced using a red laser, a double slit and a screen. The screen is 3.5 meters from the double slit. The light from the laser has a wavelength of 640 nanometers. The pattern of the fringes is shown. Shafat, remind me at the end and I'll do it. What is the separation of the slits? So x is equals to lambda d upon a. This is x, this is x, this is x, and this is x. So you have 4x in 72 millimeters. So x has a value of 18 millimeters, which is equals to 18 into 10 to the power minus 3 meters. This is your value for x. 18 into 10 to the power minus 3. Wavelength इन्होंने बताई भी है 640 nanometers, 640 into 10 to the power minus 9. Distance from the screen is given as 3.5 meters. So this is multiplied by 3.5 divided by A. A is the separation of the two slits and that is our unknown. A comes out to be 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 4 meters. 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 4 meters. Right? I'll repeat this again. They told you this is what the bright fringes look like. The distance between 1, 2, 3, 4 bright fringes is 72. Hence the distance between two bright fringes, which is equal to x, is 18 millimeters. That is our value for x. The wavelength is 640. The distance from the screen is 3.5. And that should give you the value for A as 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 4. Question 29, the diagram shows the symbol for a wire carrying a current I. What does this current represent? What does the current I represent? The charge flowing past a point in the wire per unit time. This looks right. The number of electrons flowing past a point in the wire. No, this is conventional current. Conventional current is not number of electrons. ठीक है, वो opposite direction होता है. The number of positive nuclei. No, positive nuclei don't flow. The number of protons flowing, protons don't flow. The charge flowing per unit time is basically represented by I. So that is the answer to number 29. Moving on to question number 30. An electric current I is given by the formula I is equals to A N V Q. What do each of the symbols represent for an electric current in a metal wire? A क्या represent करता है? Cross section of, we know that. N क्या represent करता है? N is the number of electrons per unit volume. ठीक है, number of free electrons. This is also known as number density or charge density, number of electrons per unit volume. So B is the correct answer. What is V? V is the average drift speed. V is the average drift speed. What is Q? Q is the charge of each electron. So B is the answer. So the answer to 30 is B. Question number 31 says, which values of current and resistance will produce a rate of energy transfer of 16 joules per second? Even though they're using 16 joules per second, they're trying to confuse you with the fancy words rate of energy transfer. ये असल में किसकी बात कर रहे हैं? पावर की बात कर रहे हैं. करंट दिया हुआ है और रेजिस्टेंस पूछ रहे हैं. The formula for power is I squared R. Power is equal to I squared R. So 1 squared into 4, and that is 4. 2 squared into 2, and that is 8. 2 squared into 8, and that is 32. 4 squared into 1, and that is 16. Which one gives you 16 joules per second or 16 watts? Watts. And the answer is D. (32). A confusing one. A coil contains N turns of insulated copper wire wound to a cylinder of diameter D. The copper wire has a diameter lowercase d. The resistivity of copper is rho. The diameter capital D is much greater than the diameter small d. Okay, so there's too much happening here, and that too with symbols as opposed to numbers. So थोड़ा वैसे ही confusing हो जाता है. What is the total resistance between the two ends of the coil of copper wire? ठीक है. The formula is R is equals to rho L upon A. सही. Now, how does this work? कह क्या रहे हैं इस सवाल के अंदर? इस सवाल के अंदर ये कह रहे हैं कि इस तरीके से हमने जो अपने कॉपर के वायर को एक सिलेंडर के ऊपर वाइंड किया हुआ है. So this is your cylinder of diameter capital D, and you basically wound it around the cylinder. So let's take this bottle as an example, and let's take this wire. Okay, so I've got a wire here, a cable. अब इस केबल का, ठीक है, assume that you don't have this port here and it's a simple wire. इस केबल का एक अपना डायमीटर है जो कि लोअर केस d से रिप्रेजेंट किया हुआ है, and that is basically what will contribute to the area. तो एरिया की अगर वो मुझे बात करते हैं तो एरिया मुझे पता है, एरिया इज इक्वल टू पाई आर स्क्वायर्ड, एरिया इज इक्वल टू पाई डी स्क्वायर्ड अपॉन 4. ठीक है, पाई आर स्क्वायर्ड और पाई डी स्क्वायर्ड अपॉन 4 एक ही बात है. अब दूसरी चीज इन्होंने कहा है कि जी ये जो हमारा सिलेंडर है ना, इसका डायमीटर क्या है? द डायमीटर ऑफ दिस सिलेंडर इज कैपिटल डी. ठीक है, दिस डायमीटर एज शोन हियर इज कैपिटल डी. इसके ऊपर हम इस वायर को लपेट रहे हैं. ठीक है, दिस इज हाउ इट्स वाउंड अराउंड इट. क्लियर? अब इसकी लेंथ अगर हमें फाइंड करनी है तो हमें ये पता करना पड़ेगा कि जी कितना इसका सर्कमफ्रेंस है और कितने टर्न्स ये कंप्लीट कर रहे हैं. सो लेट्स से इसका सर्कमफ्रेंस 10 सेंटीमीटर्स है, तो 4 टर्न्स पे 40 सेंटीमीटर्स हो जाएगा वायर की लेंथ. 5 टर्न्स पे 50 सेंटीमीटर्स, 6 टर्न्स पे 60 सेंटीमीटर्स. ठीक. सो फॉर लेंथ you will take the circumference. Circumference का फॉर्मूला होता है 2 pi r. Circumference is equals to 2 pi r. Or I can say circumference is equals to pi d. Same thing. So this gives me resistivity times pi d. लेकिन इसमें ये भी तो है कि कितने टर्न्स हो रहे हैं. एक टर्न होगा तो मल्टीप्लाई बाय 1. हमारे पास कितने टर्न्स है? n. So the total length is pi d multiplied by n divided by area. The area is pi d squared upon 4. Keeping in mind the capital D is the diameter of the cylinder, the small d, the lowercase d is the diameter of the wire. The diameter of the wire contributes to its area. The diameter of the copper tube, the cylinder, contributes to the length of the wire. What happens next is this pi cancels out with this pi, and you're left with 4 capital D times N upon D squared. 4 multiplied by resistivity, resistivity bhi hai, rho. This is rho. So the answer is 4n rho capital D upon D squared. 4n rho capital D upon rho squared, D squared. So the only way to do this is if you were to imagine or basically figure out what the diagram would look like. That is 32. Question 33 says, two cells are connected to a load resistor of resistance 3 ohms. The EMF and the internal resistance of each of the cells are shown. What is the current in the load resistor? The formula for current is total EMF divided by total resistance. The total EMF of the circuit is 9 volts. Because the two batteries are connected in such a way that they cause current to flow in the same direction, तो ये add हो जाएंगी. 6 वोल्ट भी चाहता है करंट ऐसे फ्लो करे, 3 वोल्ट भी चाहता है करंट ऐसे फ्लो करे, तो दोनों सम हो जाएंगे. तो टोटल ईएमएफ 9 हो गया. टोटल रेजिस्टेंस की अगर हम बात करें 1.2 plus 0.8 which is 2, and then you have 3 ohms. So 9 volts divided by 5 ohms. And that gives you 1.8 amperes. So the answer is C, 1.8 amperes. I hope this is clear. Just a few more to go. Just a second. The diagram shows a simple circuit. Which statement is correct? When switch S is closed, the EMF of the battery falls because work is done against the internal resistance of the battery. No, the EMF of a battery stays constant. Terminal potential difference कम हो जाता है, EMF change नहीं होता. Incorrect. When switch S is closed, the EMF of the battery falls because work is done against the resistance of R. Once again, the EMF stays constant. Potential difference कम होता है. When switch S is closed, the potential difference across the battery falls because work is done against the internal resistance of the battery. Yes, the potential difference falls and work is done against the internal resistance of the battery. C is the correct answer. Question 35 says, 6 resistors, each of resistance R, are connected as shown. The combined resistance is 66 kilo ohms. So this is R, R. They all have a resistance R. What is the value of R? So R plus, because these two are in parallel, this will be 1 upon R plus 1 upon R inverse plus 1 upon R plus 1 upon R plus 1 upon R inverse, and that combined resistance is 66. They've told us that. So this becomes R is equals to R plus R upon 2 plus R upon 3 is equals to 66. You take the LCM comes out to be 6. You get 6R plus 3R plus 2R is equals to 66. 11R, sorry, 66. Sorry, just a second. This is divided by 6. You get 11R is equals to 396 and R is equals to 36 kilo ohms. So this is kilo, this is kilo. All of these are kilo ohms. Your answer is D, 36 kilo ohms. So that is the answer to question 35, a simple question on resistors in series and parallel. Question 36 says a cell has a constant EMF and a constant internal resistance. So let's draw this cell. So this cell has a constant EMF and a constant internal resistance. A thermistor is connected between the terminals of the cell. So a thermistor is connected between the terminals of the cell. The temperature of the thermistor increases. When you increase the temperature of a thermistor, the resistance decreases. Which statement about the change of the cell's terminal potential difference is correct? Now, let's try to understand what happens. When the temperature of the thermistor increases, the resistance decreases. When the resistance of the thermistor decreases, the total resistance of the circuit decreases. Now, when they talk about current, current is EMF divided by total resistance. ठीक है, जो भी सेल का EMF है 10 वोल्ट्स हो 20 वोल्ट्स हो डिवाइडेड बाय टोटल रेजिस्टेंस इन दोनों की कंबाइंड. टोटल रेजिस्टेंस कम हो गई तो करंट क्या हो जाएगा, बढ़ जाएगा. और जब करंट बढ़ जाएगा तो जो अंदर ड्रॉप आ रहा है V is equals to IR. When the current increases, the drop inside increases. The voltage lost inside the battery increases. Hence, the terminal potential difference should decrease. So C cannot be the answer, D cannot be the answer. The terminal potential difference cannot increase. It will decrease. The terminal potential difference is decreased because more work is done moving per unit charge through the internal resistance of the cell. Yes. More work is done per unit charge. Voltage की बात कर रहे हैं. Voltage is work done per unit charge. More work is done. More voltage is lost inside the internal resistance. The answer is A. (37) says a battery with a negligible internal resistance is connected in series with a resistor and an LDR as shown. The light intensity on the LDR is decreased. So you decrease the light intensity, the resistance increases. How do the readings on the voltmeters change? So let's take a simple case. Let's say iski resistance initially 5 ohms थी और इसकी resistance भी initially 5 ohms थी. Sorry. And this is 12 volts. If this is 12 volts, each gets 6 volts. Because some students prefer having numbers. तो ये 6 volts हो गया. अब हुआ क्या कि हमने इसकी लाइट इंटेंसिटी कम कर दी तो इसकी रेजिस्टेंस क्या हो गई, बढ़ गई. जब इसकी रेजिस्टेंस 5 ओम से बढ़ जाएगी, लेट्स से 7 ओम्स हो जाएगी. अब क्योंकि इसकी रेजिस्टेंस ज्यादा है तो इसको वोल्टेज भी ज्यादा मिलेगा और इसकी रेजिस्टेंस कम है तो ऑटोमेटिकली इसका वोल्टेज कम हो जाएगा क्योंकि टोटल तो बैटरी 12 भी दे सकती है ना. तो व्हाट हैपेंस टू Q? Q increases. What happens to P? P decreases. Q increases and P decreases. क्योंकि डिवाइड तो अकॉर्डिंग टू द रेशियोज ही होना है. So P decreases and Q increases, which is option B. I'll move on to 38 now. Question 38. A radioactive nuclei is formed by a beta minus decay. The nucleus then decays by an alpha emission. Which graph shows uh, which graph shows which graph of nucleon number n plotted against proton number z shows the beta decay followed by the alpha emission? तो आसान हल ये है कि हम बीटा डिके की इक्वेशन बना लेते हैं. लेट्स मेक एन इक्वेशन फॉर द अल्फा डिके एंड दैट विल बेसिकली give us the answer. So let's say we start off with x, a, z, and x turns into y plus a beta minus. See, the number at the top does not change. The number at the bottom gets added by 1. तो आपका न्यूक्लियन नंबर चेंज नहीं होगा, आपका प्रोटॉन नंबर बढ़ जाएगा. सही है, कितने से बढ़ेगा? 1 से बढ़ेगा. So in which does z change by +1, not in a? A में ये 93 से 92 हो गया, decreases by 1. D में ये 93 से 92 हो गया, decreases by 1. So A and D are eliminated. It could either be C or it could be B. It's one of these two. Now let's talk about an alpha decay. सही, alpha decay की बात करते हैं. X, A, Z. Let's take the same nuclei. And let's move on to an alpha decay where alpha is 4, 2. And you have Y. So the nucleon number decreases by 4 and the proton number decreases by 2. In which one from B and C, which one does the nucleon number decrease by 4? तो ये 234 पे था, न्यूक्लियन नंबर कम होके कितना हो गया? 230 हो गया. 234 से 230. अब प्रोटॉन नंबर 92 से कितना हो गया? 90 हो गया. So B looks correct. Have a look at C. न्यूक्लियन नंबर इन्होंने 2 से कम किया और प्रोटॉन नंबर इन्होंने 4 से कम कर दिया. They basically flipped it, which is not the case. So the answer is B. Sorry about the issue. So the answer to 38 is B. The last two are 39 and 40. Pretty straightforward. 39 says, what are the structures of the proton and the neutron in terms of quark? A proton is made up of up, up, down. A neutron is made up of up, down, down. So 2 up quarks and a down quark for a proton. For a proton. And 1 up quark and 2 down quark for a neutron. For question 40 says, what is the charge of a top anti-quark? What is the charge of a top quark? The charge of a top quark is +2/3. Because they're asking you for an anti-quark, the anti-quark will be the opposite. So -2/3 answer है.